I got into beef with this nigga named Shooter out in New Orleans. So you know how I do, man, just follow the story. So, me, Platinum, Flame, we was chilling in Dallas and all. Then when we was chilling, at the spot where, we record music and, play video games, play pool, just, kick it, And then when Platinum was like, yo, man, that, Mardi Gras gonna be going down soon. Then he wanted to go back home to New Orleans and shit. So, I was like, alright, he said he wanted to go down there for like a month, since he, Platinum rode with me into Miami for like a month, we was on road in like New Orleans and, chill out there for a month. That way, you could record music, shoot a couple videos and, fuck with the bitches, all that. We asked Flame if he wanted to go. Flame said he was gonna stay back in Dallas, cause he had to take care of some things. So, me and Platinum, we flying in New Orleans and shit. Through his homeboys, pick us up. We chillin' and shit. And we chillin', we go down, it's Mardi Gras, so we down on Bourbon Street. So, we just enjoying the scenery and all that. I seen this bad brown skin joint, small waist, big fat ass and shit. Pretty like a motherfucker, She had a body just like motherfucking, like Cherokee, but this girl was young though. She had a body just like Cherokee, the ass, the porn star, but only difference is this girl was like in, her 20s and shit. So, we locked eyes and shit, And, I went over, started talking to the girl, We talking, getting to know each other, We exchanged numbers and shit, So right when, after we exchanged numbers and we talking, some nigga walk up and was like, yo, what the fuck you doing? Now, I ain't know this nigga, I'm thinking, he talking to me, but he was talking to, the chick. And she's like, Shooter, what are you doing here? She called him Shooter, that was his name. And he was like, built up my one, he's like, what the fuck? So they going back and forth, and I'm like, hey, homie. And he was like, yo, and then, we kind of got into it, but she trying to calm him down. Then that's when, her homegirl that she was with was like, Shooter, you need to calm down. You and Tawana ain't together no more. That was the girl name. And, he was like, I don't give a fuck, So they going back and forth. And then, that's when Tawana was like, yo, it's over, She was like, yo, you've been cheating all this time, for years, You didn't have babies on me. And now you mad because I'm moving on with my life, He basically saying he don't give a fuck, so it started getting loud. So that's when, police that was there started asking, is there a problem, is it a problem? And, they kind of got in between them. So they let the two girls, Tawana, her friend, leave. And then, they made him stay right there so he couldn't follow her, So, he kind of said something to me. I said something bad, so that's when Platinum and his boys came over and was like, so it's kind of like an argument, but, the police is there. So that's when the niggas say, alright. So the shooter niggas like, alright, so he walks off. So they like, yo, what's up? I was like, nah, man, I told Platinum I was talking to this girl and shit. And I guess this nigga used to, to dick the chick, but he's all in his feelings and shit. She ain't wanna, fuck with him, He was like, oh, God. So the police made us go different directions, so I ain't think nothing of it. Boom. So fast forward, later on that night, the girl texted me, I texted us, and now me and the Tawana chick are texting. We exchanged, IGs. So she went on on my Instagram, so my pictures, I saw hers, she sent me a few pictures I sent her, so we just talking, texting me, So, in the midst of us talking, I asked her what was all that about, with the dude or whatever. She said, that dude is, her name, the dude name is Shooter. That's her baby father. They got, a 3-year-old son together. And that she was with him, for a few years, 3-4 years. And, all he did was cheat on her. Had 2 to 3 babies on her. And he was abusive, both physically and verbally, And, after, him, having kids on her and being abusive, she just had enough, So she got a restraining order and moved on with her life. And, she's gonna be, moving out of New Orleans real soon, and she's moving to Alabama, So, that's why she, was at Mardi Gras, she was gonna have fun at Mardi Gras one last time, and of course this nigga ruined it, because he don't know where she at, because, she's staying with her homegirl that she was with, her homegirl named Tanya, so, and she says she rolls with her homegirl Tanya, because Tanya is licensed to carry, just in case, because, she's afraid of this nigga, this nigga Shooter, she say he's really like that, he's really about that, So I'm like, yeah, no doubt. So, so me and her talking, and we, at the same time, we trying to see when we gonna, next time we gonna link up. And she was like, soon, because, not only she gonna be moving to Alabama, but, she's still, working, to stack up a little bit more bread before she get up out of here. So she say, next time when she get her days off, she'll come chill with, with me or whatever. Alright, cool, cause, we done rented out this big ass Airbnb, me Platinum. Few of his peoples is there, So, we chillin', so of course, we hitting the studio, cause Platinum, he's doing tracks with his boys and shit. He's going live from the studio, working on new music, We chillin', We hit the, the nightclub scene, We hitting the strip clubs in New Orleans and shit. And, we see the Shooter nigga, I seen him, cause it was like, after, we had that confrontation, I seen him in the club. He ain't saying nothing to me, I ain't saying nothing to him, but of course, we popping bottles, we tossing money in the air, all the bitches is on us. I'm not from New Orleans, cause I got, I'm wearing Yankee fitted hats and shit, Timberlands. So, I'll stand out, and that also draw the bitches to me, A nigga from New York, They never, they never seen nothing like that, So, but, like I said, I ain't think nothing of it, Me and, so cool. So, I want to say like a day or so later, We in the trenches in the hood, Cause Platinum, he's working on he's shooting a music video with his boys and shit. Yeah, so, the name of the video is called Rue Walk. You can look it up, my nigga Platinum. It's a music video called Rue Walk, RUWALK, So, shooting the music video, Platinum shooting the music video, we inside this house or whatever. He's shooting the music video, Him and his boys and shit, So I get a call from the girl Tawana. I get a, a video call, FaceTime call, whatever. So I'm talking to the girl Tawana, she's at work, She's at work and shit, So we talking, and how you shooting music videos, they play the music, then they cut the music or play the music, cause they doing different tapes and shit. Alright, cool. So, me and them, so I'm talking to the girl, but the music, kinda get loud, so I'm like, yo, we'll step outside for a minute. They're like, alright, so I step outside in front of the spot where we was at shooting the video. So they're inside shooting the music video while I'm outside, so I'm talking to the girl, me and her talking. And I think she was doing security, late at night. She doing security late at night by herself and shit. So, we talking. So eventually, I started getting her to, like show like certain body parts, She pulling her titties out and shit, you know what I mean? She pulling her titties out, she flashed the pussy, you know what I mean? We both laughing. Got her to stand up, you know what I mean? She pulled her pants down, and she's showing her ass. It's a big, fat, country, homegrown ass. Like, this shit was, like I said, big, fat, soft ass, like Cherokee, you know what I mean? So I'm like, damn, so I'm looking at the ass, so the whole time I'm talking to her, I'm looking at the phone, and I'm walking, how you, walking up the block and then back, so I'm just walking like here, digging the, but I'm still close by, you know what I mean, so I'm walking, I got my head down, so the whole time, she's showing that ass, you know what I mean, making it clap, cause she's at, at work by herself, it's just her at night, so, she's showing her titties, she done took her shirt off, you know what I mean, so, she playing with the pussy, you know what I mean, it's like she, getting nasty for me over the phone, so I got my head down. I notice a car pull up, you know what I mean? And then, the window rolled down, and it's the shooter nigga. I'm like, oh, he pulls a gun out, he starts firing. I'm like, oh, so I duck. He's shooting, boom, boom, boom. I dropped the phone, and it was like everything was in slow motion, cause she screamed, she's like, yo, what, she's looking into the phone. Like, I could see her looking over, cause I'm ducking on the ground. And I could see her on the phone, like, yo, what's going on? Like, she's like, babe, what's going on? What's all that? And, the nigga firing, doom, he's shooting, doom. But I'm ducking on the ground. Now, mind you, I ain't had my gun on me, you know what I mean? Platinum, and his boys is holding me down. And Platinum, he got a gun in his hand while he's shooting the Rue Walk video. And his boys got guns, so I'm ducking. And, he shoot the shooter nigga's shooting, boom, he's shooting, he letting off, but I'm ducking. And the girl is still on the FaceTime, asking me like, yo, what's going on? And I'm ducking low, so I could see like the car door open, and like a sneaker, step on the ground. As soon as that nigga was about to come, and get at me with the gun, that's when Platinum come out, and his boy, they come out, they boom, they start shooting. I see the sneakers run back in the car. Boom, they jump in and take off and they shoot. And then the car take off. I'm like, what the fuck? So the Platinum was like, yo, what the? I was like, yo, that was that shooter. So I get on, if I grab the phone, I'm like, yo. I was like, yo, your baby father just came through here shooting that nigga. She like, what? I'm like, yeah, what the So now I'm heated. So Platinum was like, yo, what the fuck? He was like, yo, he's like, but he don't know who this nigga. He's like, yo, what the fuck's up with this nigga blood? So I'm like, yo, this nigga's bugging, man. I was like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And she was like, this motherfucker's crazy. She was like, he shot at you. And I'm like, yeah, this nigga just shot at me. This nigga just tried to kill me. What the So, she's trying to get me to calm down. So Platinum was like, yo, find out where this nigga be at. Yo, that's fucking violent. You're a nigga violating, man. That nigga violated. So I'm like, so, cool. So, we get up out of there and shit. And, they put the video up, video doing numbers and shit. Make sure y'all check it out, Platinum Rule Walk, right? So, meantime, we trying to get at this nigga, and I'm like, so I'm talking to the girl. So, she agreed to come over with her homegirls, her homegirl, Tawana, and a few other chicks and shit. Because we just got finished shooting that Rule Walk video. So, it's me, Platinum, bunch of his boys. So now, Tawana comes over with her girl, Tanya, and, Toya and all that. So they come over, so now, I'm chilling with, the girl Tawana, Platinum sticking in one of her homegirls and shit. So I'm asking her like, yo, what's up with this nigga, you know what I mean, So she started telling me, he be here, he be there. And it's like, whatever, but she was like, she, that's why she's leaving, cause, the nigga's real abusive, you know what I mean? And whenever she tries to move on with her life, he either like intimidates the dude, or I was like, well, I'm not intimidated, and I'm just as gangster as any other motherfucker, you know what I mean? So, we talking. So I'm trying to get information from her about him, but, She like, that's her son's father. She don't, want nothing to happen to him. You know what I mean? Cause, I can understand that, but still, this nigga pulled the gun on me and shot at me. That's what I'm thinking in the back of my head, like, that shit ain't gonna slide. So I'm still trying to butter up to get information. Next thing you know, we chilling, next thing you know, she, unbuttons my motherfucking, Gucci belt. Unzip my pants, pull down my Versace boxes. She starts sucking the nigga off. Boom, boom, sucking the nigga off. Slurping, balling. I mean, crazy, you know what I mean? No wonder this nigga going crazy, cause this head was, she gagging. I mean, this bitch is a professional. So, boom, I'm like, fuck it. So I strip her naked, you know what I mean? Bend her over, ass is like pow, big fat, soft ass cheeks and shit. I'm squeezing the ass cheeks and shit. Squeezing them together. Boom, you know what I mean? Put my face in it, you know what I mean? Smothering myself and, sucking on that clit from the back. She going crazy, you know what I mean? I'm sucking on that clit, doing all my shit, you know what I mean? Tongue in the ass, all that, smack it. Put the magnum on, put the condom on, start hitting it from the back. Boom, boom, boom. Ass just jiggling all over the place. This ass is jiggling like crazy, you know what I mean? Boom, 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 boom. I'm fucking her as hard as I can, you know what I mean? Taking my frustrations out on that pussy, boom. But it was just so crazy how small her waist is and her ass was big and her body's real. Cause, you go to her IG, all she do is work out, wear waist trainers and shit. And work out, squats all the time, all that. So her body's just pounding, fuck the shit up, tore her ass up, boom, we get it in, boom. So we chill for the rest of the night. You know what I mean? Of course, Platinum, knocked down one of her homegirls, and all that. And she always will with her homegirl, cause her homegirl's licensed to carry, you know what I mean? So, we done chilled, you know what I mean? Got it in, you know what I mean? Once or twice, you know what I mean? And so now, Tawana and, her homegirl is leaving, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Her homegirl, Tanya, whatever, so they leaving, it's like 4 of them all together. You know what I mean? So as they get in the car, the homegirl, Tanya, that Tawana be with, that's licensed to carry, she comes back in the house. I guess she told Tawana and them that she had to use the bathroom real quick, so she runs back in the house. Why Tawana and the other homegirls are all in the car waiting. The girl Tanya comes in the house. The one that's licensed to carry, she comes in the house, she like, yo. She asked me, she said, yo, did she, give you any information on Shooter? Cause I heard that he shot at you, at the music video, whatever. I'm like, nah, she's saying that's her baby father. She was like, yeah, I knew it. She was like, yo, she's like, between me and you, cause Platinum's standing there, I'm standing there. Few of his homeboys, sitting around. She was like, that nigga will be better off dead than, cause I know, how it is, I know she feels like, that's her baby father, she don't want nothing to happen to her baby father, cause, that's her son's father and all that, but she was like, that nigga be better off there, cause either he gonna wind up really hurting her, or he gonna wind up killing her, you know what I mean? And she was like, looking at y'all niggas, I could tell y'all some real niggas, could real recognize real. So that's when, she's talking to Platinum and Platinum talking back to her, they talking in the New Orleans slang, so it's like I'm catching every other word. It's like, Mia X and motherfucking, Juvenile talking back and forth, so I'm just, New York niggas just watching them talk. It's like watching Bout It or some shit. So, so she's like, yeah, here's some information on the nigga Shooter. He be here, and he be at this underground spot. She named some street, and Platinum was like, I know where that's at. So we like, alright, good looking on the information. So then that's when she goes back. Then she gets in the car, with Tawana and the other girls. They leave, so now, we got information where this nigga Shooter be at. So we, planning to get back at this nigga, because not only he shot at me, but, he violated, Platinum's, video shoot or whatever, and Platinum, that's like my little bro, so we, we tight, what I mean? So we looking around trying to get information on this nigga Shooter. Information we got, he's a thoroughbred, from out there in New Orleans, they said that, he used to roll with, BG, he used to roll with BG, but they had like a little fallout or whatever. So, he just be, roaming around on his own, ever since BG cut him off, So, he just, mid-wildin', you know what I mean? Robbing niggas, shooting at niggas, you know what I mean? Doing all kinds of shit, you know what I mean? He from, in the trenches in New Orleans, right? So cool, so we gathered the information. So, we hitting certain spots looking for him and shit. But they say he be at this underground spot, you know what I mean? Like in the hood. So, cool, so we set up, you know what I mean, and try to get at this nigga. So, we staking out, in front of the spot. Wait for this nigga to come out. We see the nigga come out. Boom. So now, we gunning for the nigga, so, we get into a little shootout with the nigga. Boom, 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 boom. We firing shots. He firing shots back. Boom, 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 boom. We firing shots. You know what I mean? The nigga gets away. You know what I mean? I couldn't believe the luck of this nigga, you know what I mean? So, nigga gets away. We take off. So the midst of us getting away, getting up out of there and him getting away. I guess he got caught, you know what I mean? Because I think he was rolling, you know what I mean? He got away, got in the car, and I guess the police came, pulled him over, because they heard, shots fired in the first car they seen with him, so they just pulled him over. And when they pulled him over, they not only found a gun on him, he had another gun in a car, you know what I mean? He had, a gun with like a, drum on it. And, he's a felon, so they're like, what the fuck? So, they pull him out the car, handcuff him, boom, boom, boom. So, so the whole time we like, fuck, you know what I mean? Could we know, we shot at him, he shot back at us, but, we know he got away, so we like, fuck. So, we get the word that this nigga got locked up, you know what I mean? Because his baby moms told me that he got locked up, he got caught with a gun and shit. And he's a felon, so so that's when we knew he was locked up. So, of course, me and the girl, why he locked up, me and the girl, Tawana, we kicking it more, you know what I mean? I'm still fucking her because, like I said, we was in New Orleans for a month. So I fucked her a whole bunch of times after that. Even went to her son's birthday party and shit. Gave money, to the little boy, took pictures with her at the birthday party. But he locked up, there's nothing he can do about it, you know what I mean? He facing, trial or whatever because he got caught with 2 guns and shit. Cool, in the midst of that, you know what I mean? The girl Tawana, she moved out of New Orleans. Now she, about to head out to Alabama. So, of course, we gonna keep in contact, cause soon me and Platinum, we going back to Dallas. That nigga, shooter, he locked up. Alright, cool. So, fast forward, right? I guess, his lawyer or whatever, made the argument that, that the search that they did was illegal, because how you just gonna stop somebody just because you heard shots fired? You're gonna just stop somebody and, pull them over. So being that the lawyer argued that it was a legal search, they took a lot of the charges off. But he still had to face charges for being a felon with, guns or whatever. So he copped out to like 3 to 4 years or whatever. Cool, so boom, so he's locked up, doing his time and shit. Meanwhile, Tawana, she's now in Alabama. I done flew out there a few times, knocked it down. She done flew to Dallas. You know what I mean? We done did our thing, you know what I mean? That's like one of my shorties, you know what I mean? I'm knocking it down, knocking it down. So shooter's locked up, you know what I mean? He's locked up, you know what I mean? But, he's getting out, you know what I mean? Like, even though he copped out to like 3 to 4 years, he only wound up doing like a year and a half, maybe 2, you know what I mean? So, he's getting out soon. Cool, you know what I mean? So me and the chick, we still messing around, but not as much because, she done got busy with her new life in Alabama. I'm doing my thing in Dallas. But I never forgot about this nigga shooter and him pulling the gun out on me. And how I came back in contact with him. Not only, he was getting out, but they was having a versus cash money and No Limit in Vegas. So of course, we going, you know what I mean? We going, you know what I mean? And I got the word, you know what I mean? Because, Tawana's homegirl always kept Platinum, you know what I mean, on point with shooter's case. And so we knew he was getting out soon, and we knew he was gonna go out to Vegas to the No Limit Cash Money versus because, him and BG started being cool again, you know what I mean? Because BG got out before he did. So they was, being cool again or whatever. Alright, cool. So we definitely going out, you know what I mean, to see the No Limit Cash Money versus, you know what I mean? Because, I knew somebody that knew somebody, you know what I mean? Because, Benny the Butcher was out there because they was having, it was like some type of, what you call them shits. So type of, I forgot what you call them shits, something con, you know what I mean? So they was having that, plus they was having the verses. They was gonna have a celebrity basketball thing, and then, the Clits is also performing after the verses. So it was like a whole weekend, so that's why we wanted to go out to Vegas. Cool, so we going to Vegas, meet Platinum, you know what I mean, Flame, the whole crew. So we get out there, you know what I mean? We at the celebrity basketball game, Little Romeo playing, my nigga Benny the Butcher playing, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Pusha T, was like my favorite rapper. He playing in the celebrity basketball game, Master P, you know what I mean? Birdman's there, everybody's at the celebrity basketball game. Bump into the nigga Shooter, you know what I mean? He comes up to me. He's like, yo, it's all love, you know what I mean? That shit was like 2 years ago, you know what I mean? 2.5 years ago, he was like, I'm home now. You know what I mean? I got my mom right. I was tripping back then, he said he was on pills and all kind of shit back then. He said he got a sober mind now, He trying to do his thing in the industry. He was like, it's all love. So I'm like, no doubt. So, we shook hands and shit. So, we flicked it up, took a few pictures, we laughed at this shit. But in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, I could rock this nigga to sleep. Because little did he know, Platinum, me, and Flame, we blood. And, I'm good out there in Vegas, you know what I mean? Because I know a nigga named Menace, that, that I do business with. Nigga Menace is a blood. He down with the Playboy Bloods out in Vegas. So I started putting the plan in the back of my head. So that's when I really started rocking him to sleep. Like, yeah, playing along with it, shaking his hand, every time, we was bumping to each other out there that whole weekend. I'm rocking him to sleep. Like, yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna, So we not only, kicked it, with the nigga Shooter at the basketball game. It was a, party at a club, strip club, be throwing money. You know what I mean? Sent a few bottles over to him and his boys. You know what I mean? So I'm getting them comfortable. So before the verses, like a day before the verses, I meet up with my nigga Menace out in Sherman Gardens, you know what I mean? Known as the Jets out in, Vegas, you know what I mean? With, Playboy Bloods be at. So, I knew Menace because, he would come out to Dallas, you know what I mean? Get up with me, I hit him off with some work, you know what I mean? When I was in the drought, he hit me off with some work, so we talking, I'm like, yo, man, I got a problem with this dude Shooter, you know what I mean? But, I'm letting him think that everything's cool and shit, you know what I mean? This nigga pulled I explained the whole situation, how this nigga pulled a gun at me, shot at me. I was like, I ain't letting that go, even though I told him that, it's good. I was like, nah. So, I'm like, yo, I need this nigga hit. So he was like, he cool with that. I was like, yo, is there a way you could have like a, a get together out here in the Sherman Gardens after the verses, like, a little powwow or whatever. You know what I mean? To where everybody just hang out. He was like, yeah, there ain't no thing. And you also say he had a little homie that could do it, you know what I mean? He said he got a little homie that's still, that make, that's when I put the 3 fingers to my head like Carmelo Anthony. You know what I mean? You let him know like a head tap. He was like, there ain't no thing. And then that's when Menace said, well, I'm gonna need a couple points shaved off. Next time we, we do business, I'm gonna need a lower price on them things. I'm like, for sure. So, we shook on it. So now we putting the plan in motion, you know what I mean? To get at this nigga Shooter, you know what I mean? So cool. So, so now, me and Shooter think, that it's all good between us. So now we at the verses, Cash Money, No Limit. So, like, even though him and BG was cool, it was still kind of shaky because, BG ain't break him off with no money yet. He just letting him come around. So, nigga Shooter was on stage, you know what I mean? with them niggas, but he wasn't really wrong with them niggas at beach. He was mostly with his girl and shit. But Shooter was the one that would, come out and chill and kick it with the, with the hood niggas. So, we chillin', first we was at the basketball game to play, the celebrity basketball game, strip club. Now we at the verses, chillin'. So after the verses, we trying to figure out what we gonna get up. So I'm like, yo, they having something over at, Sherman Gardens, my peoples, it's gonna be a get together, mad bitches. Everybody gonna be out there on the block, with their cars and shit, cause like in every city they have like, events to where niggas just pull up, show off their cars, the girls walking around, music playing out of, different cars, kinda like the scene, on Boys in the Hood where the nigga bumped into Ricky or like Paid in Full, where, they was just on the block, every, state has that. So you like, might pull up. Alright, cool. So we shake hands after the verses, boom. So now, me, Platinum Flame, we pull up to Sherman Gardens, also known as the Jets, in Vegas. Playboy Blood's out there, My nigga Menace, he making sure we good. He's showing us around and shit. We also talked about, how we gonna get at this nigga Shooter. Platinum and Flame don't know though. So, we chillin' and chillin', standing around and shit. Just chillin', joining the scenery, you had different type of cars playing different types of music. Like you might walk on one end, they might be playing Boosie, you walk on another end, they playing Rick Ross, you walk on another end, they playing 50 Cent, you walk on another end, they playing, Yo Gotti, Moneybag Yo, like just music coming from all over. And everybody just walking around, you see all types of cars and But it's a blood neighborhood, shout out to the Playboy Bloods and shit, my nigga Menace, So we chillin', so I'm thinking that this nigga Shooter might not show up, cause this is like the hood. So, lo and behold, the nigga Shooter show up with like two other niggas, so I'm like, alright. So, of course, nigga Menace, he had, bottles of liquor, He hit Flame and Platinum off, with a bottle of liquor I don't drink. So it was this young girl out there. She was like maybe like 17, 18. I went up to her. I'm like, yo, you want to make $100 real quick? She was like, yeah. I gave her $100. I took one of the bottles that wasn't open. Cause Menace had mad bottles of champagne out there. I said, yo, give it to that dude right there. It was, Shooter. So, So she walks over, so I'm standing, I got Platinum on my left side, Flame on my right, and I'm in the middle. So I'm just standing there. The girl walks up to Shooter and gives him the bottle of liquor, so, they talking. Then she points over at me, and then that's when I did like the army salute with my hand. And that's when, Shooter was smiling, he held the bottle up. As soon as Shooter, held the bottle up and cracked a smile, that's when this nigga with a red bandana tied around his face and all red walked up to him, put the gun to his head, pow, shot him in the head. Boom, everybody started screaming. Even the girl that, gave him the bottle screamed and ran. The two niggas that I was with Shooter, them niggas took off like road runners, like, that's how you gotta know who your friends is, right? Them niggas took off. So, when I looked over to, my left, the nigga Platinum had a shocked look on his face like, what the? And then, he looked at me, I just smiled. And then when I looked at Flame, he had no expression. So, boom. So now the nigga, Shooter just laying there face down staring into space with a hole in the back of his head. Everybody went in crazy. Everybody went in, different directions. Me, Platinum and Flame, we just standing there. The nigga Menace, we just standing there. So I put my glasses on. I'm like, yo, we out. So, that's when me, Platinum, Flame, and Menace, we walking slow through the crowd. Everybody went in different directions. The nigga that shot Shooter, he passed it, the gun to one nigga, passed it to another nigga, passed it to another nigga. Gun gone. Then the nigga, Shooter just laying face down, laying on it, face down, just staring in the space hole in his head. His boys left, they never even come back to check on him, So we walking through the crowd, we with Menace, we get in Menace car, we take off, we get up out of there. So I want to say about maybe like 2 hours later, I get a call, from Tawana, she crying shit saying that, her baby father got killed out there. I'm acting shocked and shit, you know what I mean? But, so I'm trying to console her. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna take the first flight out there to Alabama. You know what I mean? So, once we left Vegas and, after the verses or whatever and all that, and, I go to Alabama, I'm consoling her, you know what I mean? Of course, fucking and shit. And then, we sent flowers, how he was sent flowers, to the family and shit. But, yeah, I know he wanted to squash it, but, pull no motherfucking gun on me and get away with it, you know what I mean? So, and I don't think to this day to want to know that, I had something to do with that, but nah, man. You know what I mean? Pull a gun on me, nigga, it is what it is, you know what I'm saying?